Hari Om, everyone. So do you see one screen or two screens?
We can see the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter.
Okay, so only one screen, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because Sridharji is not here. I want to make sure that it's going the right way. Thank you. So welcome, everyone. Let's get started. Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavit Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vridavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini. Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamayah Pradeepaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikaparnaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamrudaduhe Namaha. Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Braja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So again, welcome to our Bhagavad Gita session. We are doing the 3rd chapter, the chapter on Karma Yoga, or the yoga of action. As you can see, this is, we've been seeing this as one of the most practical chapters, which we can sort of relate to. Sometimes the concepts given here are also seems like very difficult to practice, but in a sense, this chapter really helps us to understand the attitude of every action that we do, the attitude in which we have to do every action. So based on what we have covered so far, today we will review Shlokas 19, 20, and 21. We had finished with 18 last time. So let's move on to Shloka 19. So if you recall, Shloka 19 talked about Tasmada Sakta Satatam Karyam Karma Samachara Asakto Hyacharan Karma Param Apnoti Purushaha. So it says that, therefore, in this attitude, what we talked about, in this attitude of action, every action that we do, let's do it without attachment, and let's do it as duty. And by this, we can attain the Supreme Being. So the reflective question for us here is, what does really the specific word attachment in this context of action, what is it really referring to? So what is the word attachment in this context where it says asaktaha? How is that related to the context in which we were talking about? So any thoughts? Any thoughts on this that comes to your mind? Because as we know, each one of us are playing some role or the other, whether it is a family role of mother, father, daughter, brother, or at work in situations of manager or as an employee, those things, or in community. So how would we define this word where the shloka is asking us to do samachara or a great job? So what does the word attachment here referring to?
What result we might get? What is it for me?
What is in it for me? Okay, so are you saying, Anita, that in terms of my attachment to the result?
Yes.
Okay, good one. Yes, very good. Any other thoughts on? So Anita said that, we shouldn't be attached to the results of action, or if I'm doing a certain action, let's take as an example of a manager or even as a lab employee, I should not worry about the results of the action, which is, how the results are going to come out. But then doesn't that lead to a very passive state? So the question then is, how would I do this without making that as a very passive, tamasic way of doing it?
Not take the worship.
Yeah, go ahead, Avinash. As an attitude of worship, okay. So if
not,
I do
not,
it
not take it as a doership, So
yeah, not take this as an ego coming into play, but do it as a surrender. Okay, very good. Any other thoughts?
Best of your ability.
To the best of your ability, yes. Samachara, which says about best of the ability. Do a fantastic job, do the best we can. That is true. So you're right. So all these things captures the shloka. I just wanted to make sure that as we are referring to each shloka, at least there's one word which helps me to bring this knowledge to a practical application. Okay, so the next shloka here of 20 is karman aiva hi samsiddhi asita janakadeyaha lokasangrahamevapi sampashyan kartum arhasi. So there are two main thoughts that are referred to here. What are the two thoughts that is referred to in terms of, again, my action every day, on how I'm performing my action? And why is it that Janaka as a person is referred to here?
He's a role model.
He's a role model for Arjuna, correct? He may not necessarily be a role model for us as such, right?
Yeah.
I mean, on a very broad plane, yes, he's a role model, but on a specific role, here the word Janaka is taken. Okay, that is one thought. And the second one?
You can attain perfection through karma.
You can attain perfection through karma. Very good, Meenu. That is, so just if I do my own duty, whatever I am in, the environment in which I'm in, as a mother, as a community sevak, as anything, that environment has been provided for me to do my karma very well. That is true.
Role model for the society.
Role model for the society, yes. Role model in the chosen field of action, right? So that is the context here for choosing Janaka. For Arjuna, the only way now, for Arjuna, suppose somebody had told him that your father is the role model, he probably must have said, okay, I'm not so sure if my dad is my role model at this point. For him, Janaka, because he was also a similar king, was given to him as a role model. So yes, the role model aspect is given. Second thing, a specific role model. And again, this is a lesson for us when we are trying to, when we are trying to influence somebody, we want to make sure that we choose the right role models to influence them. And that's why Janaka is here. But the second thought here referred to is, I think each one of us, we have this ability to be a leader. And here Arjuna is asked to be a leader. And here, as a leader, the specific responsibility is for the sake of protecting the masses. That is Loka Sangraha. Loka Sangraha is spoken about here. So there is a deeper meaning also here to show that every action that we do should be done in such a way that it's for the mass, for the community. So to Avinash's point, the doership should be removed out. So that is the other thing which comes out here. Loka sangraham eva api sampashin kartumahasi. Very good. So the next one, the shloka number 21, which we have been talking about as one of the important ones here. Yat yada charati shreshtaha tatta devetaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokas tadanu vartate. So the point here is this shloka really applicable to me? That is the question here. And if so, how? Because here he talks about only great people and then leaders and who sets a standard. So how is this shloka really applicable to me? Any thoughts here?
I think it's saying that people, by their action, have impact on others. You know, we may not be visible to us because in some way, somebody somewhere may be looking up to you. You know, like in the great people, then people follow. In our own context, our sons maybe or children may be looking up to us. So we should have kind of a model behavior. That's what I feel. So
yes, you're right, Avinash. So each one of us are, whether we know it or not, we can be a role model for somebody. And I remember in my own context, long time ago, almost 25 years ago, I think, when Sam's Club was still there, I remember I was just coming from home, from my work, and I was stopping by at Sam's Club. And I think I took a little fast turn to park in a parking spot. So I wasn't aware that somebody was watching me, but a month later, somebody from the community said, you know, I was shocked to see that you were driving so fast. You know, so I'm just bringing that as an example from my own, that how alert each one of us have to be with our own actions. And I remember it was just a matter of parking in a parking lot where I took a sharp turn, but somebody watched that and somebody brought this to my attention. So just as a way of explanation. So this is, so that's the imitation part of it, as also what the Pramanam talks about as a standard and how people are watching, I guess. Any other thoughts? So again, this being the reflective portion of our session, I wanted to bring up some thoughts here. Anything to add? Okay, so then let's move on. Let's move on to Shloka number 22, where we saw this, after having explained about role models, we saw how Lord Krishna wanted to show Arjuna his own example. He wanted to push Arjuna to the maximum possible, to the highest potential. So, which is why he brings himself as an example for Arjuna. And here he's trying to show that from his example, that essentially Krishna is trying to tell him that in this matter of action, he also is acting, even though there is nothing for him to gain. Name partha asti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana na anavaptyam avaptavyam varta evacha karmani. So neither in the three worlds, and there is in all the three worlds is nothing for him to attain, but he has attained so much, or he's so fulfilled that there was never a time that he was looking for something to attain, nor does he have anything in the future to attain. Yet he's always acting. So again, another way for Arjuna to be enthused about doing what he has to do. So from here, then Lord Krishna again brings about this aspect of that as a role model, it is necessary that even though he doesn't have anything to attain, he still continues to act, because if he didn't do it, then people will mistake that he's not acting and he's not doing anything, that is, and that he was just sitting quietly. And in this respect, he could also be mistaken for laziness, and therefore he doesn't want that aspect to be brought up. And then that followed this other question of utsi deyurme lokaha na kuryam karma chetaham sankarasya chakartasyam upahanyam ima prajaha. So we discussed this last time about how Lord Krishna's role is actually to maintain this universe. And in this maintenance of universe, which includes the microcosm as well as the macrocosm. So from a macrocosm perspective, Sri Krishna's mission is to make sure everything is going on in a rhythmic fashion. All the devatas, the nature, everything is happening in a rhythmic fashion. So that is one. But on a more specific role where it is applicable to us, and that is in the microcosmic way, we saw last time about how Lord Krishna is also responsible for making sure that there is smooth functioning of all the people. I mean, looking at the human beings. So in here, with the society being divided into the 4 classes, and each class based upon their skill set have a certain responsibility towards the society. So it is Lord Krishna's also one of the responsibilities to make sure that everything is moving in a rhythmic fashion, where the Brahmins are doing what they have to do, Kshatriyas have to work for their job, the business, the Vaisyas has to do the administration part of it, and the Shudras, the Vaisyas taking care of the sustenance in terms of the money coming into the community, and the Shudras being the people who are responsible for doing all the legwork. So in that, the harmony, and so that is what he's referring here. So the next shloka 25, which we saw last time, is really, if you look at it, is about teamwork. So in this shloka, having explained about leadership, now we are looking at how Lord Krishna is giving a guideline for Arjuna in terms of how he needs to work with other people as a leader. Very important, extremely important, as how should a leader really work with the people, how he or she should work in harmony with others who may not have understood or learned the technique. So that is where he's trying to show here. So this, even in simple examples, actually in Bhagavad Gita itself, we see from the beginning where when Arjuna was, so shattered, and he was trying to show, his own opinion about how the battle should be held, we saw Lord Krishna actually listening very patiently and to Arjuna, knowing that he could not say anything, and that he should not say anything. And knowing the situation, or knowing the situation to whom, to the people whom you're talking to, understanding the behavior. So he was trying to show that, right? So we see that with that kind of a teamwork, in Shloka 25, from now on, I'm going to try and see if I can put the meanings of the actual Sanskrit words here. And we'll see how, if I can make the slide a little more prettier than what it is. But in Shloka 25, we see Lord Krishna trying to explain as to how the leader should act, the leader should work with the followers. So, Sattaha Karmanya Vidvamsaha Yatha Kurvanti Bharata Kuryat Vid Vidvamsaha Kuryat Vidwan Tatha Asaktaha Chikirshu Loka Sangraham. So he says that while the followers, right, while the people who are acting in the world, they act in such a way that they're very attached to action. And just as they act from that level, he's trying to show that the leaders also should adopt that attitude of enthusiasm, zeal, hard work, all that the leader also has to do it. The only difference being between the two is the leader, or the wise person who's a leader, should act in such a way that the person is doing it for the sake of Loka Sangraha, just for desiring with that view. So Sattaha, which is attachment, Karmani, in action, Avidvamsaha. Vidwan is a wise, Avidvamsaha is ignorant people. So too, Bharata, referring to Arjuna here, Kuryat, has to act. And here we have Vidwan, who is a wise person, Tatha Asakta, should act, wishing for the society welfare. So this is the idea of this. We saw this last time. And in Shloka number 26, having explained that, is this compassionate leadership, which is what I was referring to as how Krishna teaches how that one has to be a very compassionate leader here. So in this shloka, he's trying to show that, as a leader, one has to move with the followers to some extent, and then slowly turn the followers to their own way, but to be compassionate in the beginning. So he says, Na buddhi bedam janayet ajnanam karma sanginam joshayet sarva karmani vidwan yukta samacharan. So without causing any unsettlement in the minds of the people whom the leader is leading, but making sure that the leader, engages them, joshayet, engages them, sarva karmani, in all the actions, vidwan yukta samacharan. So at all times, the leader should be totally balanced, should not get angry, should not get, too excited or too upset if something doesn't go the way it is, but try to, to exercise this compassionate leadership, as I mentioned here. So we saw that also last time. I just put these words here to make sure that that is, coming through here. So having said this, then shloka number 27 is what we will see now, is all about, now the question is, okay, you've explained about how ignorant people or people who are not aware of the philosophy is acting with attachment. And then you see the wise person who is acting without attachment. So now tell me, why does this ignorant person be that way? What is the reason that a person who's ignorant behaves that way? And what is the reason that a wise person is very wise? So a very simple way to say it. So we have the next 4 shlokas almost really addressing that aspect of this, of the aspect of what is it that a person is, that makes a person ignorant. So I'll chant the shloka here. Prakrute kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashah ahankara vimudhatma kartahamiti manyate. So the meaning again, prakritihi, prakrite or prakritihi, which is basically refers to nature, which is, pretty much everything which is out here, all the trees, animals, human beings, everything is nature. So what is all this? They are prakritehe kriyamanani gunaihi. So performed by the gunas, which are nature's qualities. So this nature can be divided into 3 qualities, and we'll come to that. And those qualities are called as gunaha. Karmani sarvashaha. So everything in this universe, everything in this nature, they act only according to the gunas. Karmani sarvashaha. Sarvashaha, all karmani, all actions. So everything in this world, if you see why certain things are acting in a certain way, they're all decided, governed, determined by the gunas. However, ahankara vimudhatma, a person who is a mudha indicating a person who is not a wise person, or you might call it mudha. In Bhajagovindam, we have come across this word. Mudha means a fool, but keep in mind the word fool is used only in the form of to say that, oh, how come you don't get this, in that sense. Okay, so ahankara vimudhatma. So, however, somebody who thinks that it is he or she who is doing it, ahankara vimudhatma, deluded with the sense of ego, such a person says that, you know what, it is not the gunas which is doing it, I am the one who's doing it. I am the doer. I am the person who's doing all this. So this is how we see the difference that is coming out, which is being shown between an ignorant person and a wise person. It's probably the first time that we are actually seeing the word ego or ahankar being introduced here. Here, the word ego should be understood as not really, the arrogant ego or something. And we will talk about that pretty soon. But here, the word ego is referred to more as the individuality, as the individual person. The minute I look at myself as Sunitha, for example, I'm already looking at people who are not Sunitha, So the separation of people comes into play. And that separation is what is referred to here as the individuality. So prakritihi, of prakriti, kriyamanani, which is acted upon by gunaha, by the gunas, all actions in all situations. Ahamkara is ego, vimudhatma, one who is completely deluded. Such a person thinks that he or she is the one who is doing it. Manyate, he thinks about it. So this is, as a simple example, if you want to look at this way, is now imagine, my daughter is going for a competition in Bharatanatyam, And she wins a prize for the first prize for being in that competition or something. Now, if she were to think that, hey, I won the prize, I did it, it is not 100% true, because before she really won the competition, there are so many people who really were involved in the fact that she was getting a prize. Her teacher put in a lot of effort to train her. Her parents put a tremendous amount of effort to take her to the dance lessons wherever she wanted. And then there were all these, the stage people who made sure that her dance really came out well. So there are so many things, right? So in that sense, it is not she alone, but if she were to say, I did it and I alone did it, that is where that sense of ego comes into play, that I am the doer and I did it. So this is how I just wanted to give that example of here to show the sense of ego. But there is a lot more in the shloka that we need to understand as what do we mean by the gunas. So I think I've shown this before as the fact that in nature, we have these three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. We have seen this in this context before as, sattva being pure, positive, rajas being more of an active and, which is more desire-ridden, and tamas is more, which is kind of a laziness and laziness and something which is inactive. So let's look at it that way. So it is inactive, active, and maybe we can call this as unactive, if at all there is a word called unactive, but to show that the difference between the three qualities. So how does this refer to nature? That is what the shloka is about, right? The shloka is saying, performed by the gunas, which is nature's qualities, each one of us act. So in this book called Tattva Bodh, which is so beautiful, which really tells us about what is Maya. Maya is nothing but this Prakriti that we are talking about. So in Maya, there are three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. And here the Sattva, Rajas, Tamas is divided into, is how we would look at the whole nature. So for example, Sattva, the Sattva guna is the one which is responsible for all the organs of knowledge. So tatha akashaha sambhutaha akashat vayuhu vayu tejaha tejas apaha adhyapaha prithvi. So these are all the tanmatras, so to speak, which are responsible for the organs of knowledge. And those organs of knowledge is what the sattva is all about. So the sattva is responsible for the aspect of the organ of hearing, organ of touch, organ of sight, all these, the sattva guna is actually responsible. And then we have, it is also responsible for the mind, intellect, ego, and the chitta, memory. All these are also from the sattvic gunas. And the rajasic gunas are, the rajasic guna is the one which is responsible for the organs of action. We have the hands, legs, etc. All these, they come from the rajoguna, and along with also the pranas. So we have the 5 pancha pranas, as we say. They are also from the rajogunas. And then the tamoguna is the one which is responsible for what we see as the entire gross world. The entire gross world which we see in front of us. Okay. So the 5 gross elements, they contribute to the tamas. So this is, or tamas is responsible for the gross elements of what we see. So that being the case, the shloka is trying to show that how we have, it is all these gunas, the nature, which is really responsible for all these acts. So we have the sattvic guna, which is responsible for the organs of knowledge. we have the Rajoguna, which is responsible for the organs of action, as well as the pranas, and the Tamoguna, which is the entire world outside, which we see. And so that being the case, they are the ones which are actually acting. But we think that because of the sense of ego, that I am the one who's doing all this. So that's what Shloka number 27 is trying to show here. So let's move on to the next Shloka then, which is Shloka number 28. So this being the case, we have how does a wise person look at the whole thing? So this is what we'll see in Shloka 28. Tattvaviddu mahabaho, tattvaviddu mahabaho, gunakarma vibhagayoho, gunakarma vibhagayoho, guna guneshu vartante, guna guneshu vartante, iti matva na sajjate, iti matva na sajjate. So we saw in the previous shloka where an ignorant person who is not aware that it is actually the gunas which are acting, which are responsible for the action, but an ignorant person thinks that I, or that person is really the one who's doing everything, right? A beautiful example that Swami Chimananda gives here is, he gives this beautiful incident about how a family of a mother, a father, and a young son, an 8-year-old son. They are traveling from, they are traveling for about 3-4 hours, and they have to reach this place before nightfall. So about 80% of the journey is already completed. And there's just a small portion where, they have to drive the car up a kind of a mountain before reaching the place. And so just when he is about to climb the mountain, he suddenly realizes that the gas light has come on. So that means that, he doesn't have enough fuel to go up the mountain. And his wife, tells him, oh, I told you that you have to fill in the fuel. You didn't do it. And look what you did. You've got us into this trouble. Oh, what are we going to do? So the child looks at the mother, and the child then looks at the father, and he feels the pain of the father's, thinking that, what are we going to do? So he immediately gets up from his seat, and he puts his leg on the dashboard, and then he pushes it, saying that, look, I will try to push this car up the mountain. So the dad, lets the child do what he has to do, but somehow tries to, continue driving. And by good fortune, he reaches the top without a problem. And then once he reaches there, the child gets out of the car and, tells his uncle who was waiting there, saying that, see, I'm the one who really brought this car all the way up. So, the uncle and the dad, they don't say anything. They just smile because, after all, he's just a child talking. So the analogy here is, we are like this child. We think that we are the ones who are doing all this, just like the child, that we are pushing it. But in reality, it is the gunas along with the consciousness principle, which are the ones which is making it happen. But we take ownership about all this, just like how the child did. So in this shloka here, now we see that unlike the ignorant person, or unlike all of us, a tattvavit who is a knower of the truth, he's a person, he says tattvavit, tu indicating however, or to. Krishna is saying that in comparison to the ignorant person, here you have Tattvavit. He says, and he's referring to Arjuna as Mahabaho. He says the gunas, but he knows how it happens. He really knows, the Tattvavit knows the division of the qualities and the functions. He knows exactly what is, how the nature is divided into all these gunas and how they act. And gunaha guneshu vartante. So it is those, and the Tattvavit also knows it is nothing but it is the gunas themselves which are in the midst of the effects of the gunas. So here, this is how it has to be understood. On one hand, we have the cause, and the other hand, we have the effects. So the gunas, they themselves are actually also involved in the guneshu, which is the objects here. Iti matva na sajjate. So understanding this very well, a wise person does not really exert his ego or anything, because he knows clearly it is not he as such who's doing all this. It is only the play. Everything is nothing but a play of Maya, so to speak. And that being the case, why should he be worried at all? So that's the idea which is being shown here. And just another quotation from Kathopanishad, which I wanted to bring here. Suryo yatha sarva lokasya chakshuhu na lipyate chakshuhu bahya doshaihi ekastata sarva bhutantaratma na lipyate loka dukkhena bahyaha. So just to show here that just, as the sun, which helps all the eyes to see, is not affected by the blemishes of the eyes or of the external things, so also the wise person who recognizes that it is nothing, or he or she is none other than that Atman, and that Atman being the case is never really contaminated by the misery of the world. So just a kind of an analogical shloka here. So too, the wise person does not get affected by anything. The wise person is, again, going back to the previous one, is complete by himself or herself. So wanted to put this, which is, so ultimately it's only the gunas who are acting. I, as a person, I'm just a witness to the whole thing. So that is the philosophy, and that is the truth that the wise person really understands, that he or she is not the doer. It is that consciousness principle along with gunas that is acting. And we, on the other hand, we take ourselves to be the doer, and we are acting in this world of actions and taking that to be ourselves. So that brings to the next shloka 29. And in this shloka, he tries to again show the difference between we as ignorant people who are not aware of this ultimate philosophy and actually the wise person. So he still wants to, restate this aspect that, to understand that one can only lead by example here. Prakrute guna sammudhaha sajjante guna karmasu Tana kritsna vidon mandan kritsna vitna vichalayet kritsna vitna vichalayet. So again, a comparison of an ignorant versus a wise person here. He's again trying to say that prakritihi guna sammudaha. Those people who are affected by the gunas, deluded by the gunas, which are the qualities of nature, they unfortunately cannot help but sajjante guna karmasu. They cannot help but being attached to their functions because they're so affected by the gunas. They're so, basically they're just totally consumed by the fact that they are that ego, which is born out of the Prakriti also. Whereas Tan akritsna vidaha mandan, those of imperfect knowledge should, and furthermore, he's trying to show, those of imperfect knowledge should not be unsettled by those of perfect knowledge, indicating that when you have such people who are extremely affected or deluded by these gunas, he says the wise people should not really, should not try to immediately try to change them, because akritsna vidaha mandan. So such people are mandan. He's trying to show are very slow, are very slow in their thinking. They are manda buddhi, they say. Manda buddhi means dull-witted. So, and then akritsna, who, they do not really, they are of very limited knowledge, limited again, not understanding the scope of this whole universe, understanding, the infinite nature. So that's the idea behind why he's trying to show that people who are mandan, they should be led very slowly. So the idea is again not to upset them too quickly, but to really, for example, this previous shloka where we had na buddhi bedam janayet, where slowly they have to be guided because it is, they are so much steeped in ignorance. That's the whole idea with which it is being said. So these 27, 28, 29, these shlokas really talk about the comparison of people, normal people and somebody who's wise. And finally, this last shloka in the series of this 4 shlokas is one of the most, again, very important shloka here. You will see that it's coming up. It's a beautiful shloka which really talks about the secret of success. So how do we motivate such a person into the secret of success, and what are the pitfalls such people face from being successful? What is it? How do those gunas really prevent a person from doing it? And those pitfalls, which we will see next week, are how such people are constantly thinking about the past, worrying about the past, and the worries themselves prevent them from moving ahead. Or it could be, excitement of the present, indicating that you have so many things going on all the time. How do they, how does that act as an obstacle? And finally, the anxieties of an imagined future. So we will see this next week. And again, if you have any questions or anything, we do have a few minutes. We can do that now, or you can send it to me as well. I'll give you a few minutes. If anything jogged your memory from these 3 shlokas. If not, I think we will stop.
Oh.
Yeah, any question?
1 second, Sunitha ji.
Yes.
So we're saying the gunas make us do what we're doing, right?
Correct. It's only the gunas which are, yes.
But shouldn't we transform from tamas, rajas to sattvic? Slowly we have to transform, right? So we cannot say this is the guna and just accept it, correct?
Yes. Very good point, Jayshriji. I appreciate your bringing it. And we touched upon this aspect last time also, about how it is the gunas which are influencing our attitude. And not just our attitude, but even the people whom we are surrounded with. I think that was Suvarna's question too, is we do need to transcend from tamas to rajas to sattva.
Okay.
And in this shloka, what Lord Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna is, even at the level of sattva, of course, it is only gunas acting in this field of the objects of the gunas. So indicating that it's all in Maya. But while we are engulfed in this Maya, the way to take us out of Maya is only the sattvic buddhi. And we have to graduate from being a tamasic person to a rajasic person to a sattvic person.
Okay. Thank you, Sunitha ji.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question.
Please, Meena.
On Shloka number 29, you said the wise men should not try to change the dull people. So can you elaborate a little bit about it and why?
Yeah, very good. So the whole idea again here is it is a yes and no kind of answer, in the sense, ultimately a dull person needs to be led or needs to be influenced by somebody who's a little more wiser than this person. That is true. However, it has to be done carefully. It is not something that you can just go to anybody and say, hey, for example, come to this Bhagavad Gita. That is not the way to just say that, because the person's nature at that moment is not really towards Bhagavad Gita. It is probably something, maybe a level little more than where that person is. Okay. So as an example, we talked about last time too, is suppose I have, I'm really enthused about Bhagavad Gita, and I have I'm just using this example, which may or may not be true at all, but I have somebody at home who is very content watching, say, Netflix, right? And which is fine, which is perfectly fine for where the person is. But if the person really is getting affected emotionally, is really very agitated and everything, and you really want to help out this person, so asking the person to come to Bhagavad Gita is not the answer at that point. So one has to lead the person very slowly from wherever that person is, from watching Netflix to maybe watching something on maybe more sattvic kind of an entertainment on Netflix. But even this, you take a step-by-step kind of an approach. So this is what he's trying to show, that should not be unsettled. The word here is actually unsettled. You cannot do anything very suddenly. So that's this aspect which is being talked about here, that among the two gunas, by somebody who is a perfect knowledge. You cannot have this holier than thou kind of an attitude.
Got it. Thank you.
So this chapter 3 really has a lot of things to ponder upon and see a practical application. So I really appreciate you bringing up these questions. So as I said, Shloka 32 is again another very important shloka of this in third chapter. Shloka 321 was an important one. This 30 is actually an even more important, which really addresses how can we really be successful by keeping in grip all these things. So with that, we'll finish here. Sarve bhavantu sukinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasyat dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Hari Om, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks to everyone for
Thank you,
joining us.
Sunita.
Thank you so
Welcome.
much. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Sunita.
you, Sunita.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sunita.
Hari Om. Thank you.
Hari Om. Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunitha ji. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jayshree. See you, Anita.
Bye.
See you,
Yeah, nice seeing you.
Madhuri.
Thank
See
you.
you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Hari.
Bye.
Hari